Visit truckdrivernation.com today, your career path to trucking and freight dispatching and working from home. We're going to be covering rate confirmations in this presentation. So we're going to be looking at dry van, reefer, flatbed, and step deck. So sit back and write your questions down. At the very end, we do have an actual invite if you want to actually join our webinar. Please like or subscribe. It definitely helps us out. You know, we build this content, we do our best. So please, hopefully you'll help us out in that format. But outside that, if you want to actually learn to be a freight dispatcher and work from home, please go to truckdrivernation.com. You can easily go down. If you want to get hold of me directly, we have a Telegram link in there, and just pop the QR code and you get direct access with me. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the presentation.
Today we're going to cover one of the most important subjects every freight dispatcher must understand before they ever book a load: trailer types and weight capacity. This may not sound exciting at first, but understanding weight can be the difference between making money and losing money. It can be the difference between a successful load and a costly mistake. And for a carrier, it can mean the difference between staying compliant and receiving expensive DOT violations. One of the biggest mistakes new freight dispatchers make is focusing only on the rate per mile. They see a load paying great money and immediately want to book it. But experienced dispatchers know that the first question isn't how much does it pay? The first question is, can this truck legally haul it? In most situations, a standard tractor trailer combination operates under a legal gross vehicle weight limit of 80,000 pounds. That number includes everything: the truck, trailer, fuel, driver, equipment, personal belongings, and the freight itself. What many new dispatchers don't realize is that every trailer type weighs something different. The heavier the equipment, the less freight it can legally carry. Let's start with the 53-foot dry van. The dry van is the most common trailer on the road. It's fully enclosed, freight from weather, theft, and damage. A typical tractor and dry van combination usually weighs between 16,000 and 18,000 pounds empty. That leaves an approximate payload capacity of 43,000 to 45,000 pounds. Dry vans are commonly used for retail goods, consumer products, package freight, paper products, and general merchandise. Now let's move to the 53-foot reefer. A reefer trailer looks similar to a dry van, but it includes a refrigeration unit designed to keep freight frozen or temperature controlled. That refrigeration system adds weight. Because of that, a reefer combination generally weighs between 17,000 and 19,000 pounds empty, reducing payload capacity to approximately 42,000 to 44,000 pounds. One of the most common mistakes dispatchers make is assuming a reefer can haul the same weight as a dry van. That small assumption can create major problems when booking heavier freight. Next is the flatbed trailer. Flatbeds are commonly available in both 48-foot and 53-foot lengths. They're designed for freight that cannot fit inside an enclosed trailer. Steel, lumber, pipe, machinery, construction materials, and oversized products are commonly transported on flatbeds. Because flatbeds are lighter than enclosed trailers, the empty weight typically ranges between 15,500 and 17,500 pounds. That gives them some of the highest payload capacities in trucking, usually between 45,000 and 48. These on pounds. However, dispatchers must remember something many beginners overlook: chains, straps, tarps, edge protectors, binders, and securement equipment all add weight. Every pound of equipment reduces available payload capacity. Finally, we have the step deck, also known as a drop deck. Step decks are designed for taller freight that would exceed legal height limits on a standard flatbed. Because of their specialized design and heavier construction, they typically weigh between 18,500 and 20,500 pounds empty. That reduces payload capacity to approximately 44,000 to 46,000 pounds. Step decks are commonly used for heavy equipment, agricultural machinery, equipment, generators, and taller freight requiring additional clearance. Now, here's something every dispatcher at Truck Driver Nation needs to remember. Just because a trailer can legally haul a certain weight doesn't mean the carrier wants to haul that weight. Many owner-operators place their own restrictions on freight. Some drivers don't want loads over 40,000 pounds. Others may limit themselves to 42,000 or 44,000 pounds to improve fuel mileage, reduce wear and tear on equipment, avoid difficult scaling situations, or simply make their job easier. As a dispatcher, your responsibility is not just booking freight. Your responsibility is booking freight that fits the carrier's preferences, equipment, and operating style. Another mistake new dispatchers make is assuming all trucks are identical. They're not. Different tractors have different weights. Fuel tank sizes vary. Some trucks have APUs, inverters, refrigerators, toolboxes, racks, and additional accessories. All of those items add weight and reduce available payload. That's why professional dispatchers always ask questions before booking freight. What trailers is being used? What is the carrier's maximum preferred weight? Does the truck have an APU? Are there any special equipment restrictions? Has the carrier provided a maximum cargo weight? These simple questions can prevent expensive mistakes. A good dispatcher books loads. A great dispatcher protects the carrier. Before booking any freight, always verify the weight, dimensions, trailer type, commodity, securement requirements, and any special instructions. Never assume, never guess, verify everything. At Truck Driver Nation, we teach dispatchers that successful load planning starts long before a load is booked. When you understand trailer types and weight capacity, you're not just filling trailers, you're protecting profits, preventing violations, improving carrier relationships, and building a professional dispatching business. The more you understand the equipment, the more valuable you become to the carriers you serve. And that's exactly what separates a beginner dispatcher from a professional freight. In this lesson, we're going to break down a dry van rate confirmation and discuss the information every freight dispatcher must verify before a load is dispatched. One of the biggest mistakes new dispatchers make is looking at only one thing on a rate confirmation, the rate. They see a load paying good money and immediately want to book it. Professional dispatchers know better. Before a load is ever assigned to a truck, every section of the rate confirmation must be reviewed carefully because this document becomes the agreement between the broker and the carrier. The first thing we should verify is the broker information. Make sure the broker's company name, MC number, DOT number, contact information, and dispatcher contacts are listed correctly. If a problem occurs during transit, these are the people you'll be communicating with. Missing or incorrect information can create confusion and delays. Next, verify the load number and confirmation number. These identifiers will follow the load from pickup all the way through payment. If paperwork gets misplaced or payment questions arise, these numbers become extremely important. Now let's look at the rate details. Notice that this load pays an all-in rate. That's something dispatchers should always pay attention to because all-in usually means the broker considers the quote to include everything unless otherwise stated. Before accepting any load, make sure both the carrier and dispatcher understand exactly what is covered. Moving down to the pickup and delivery sections, verify the dates, appointment windows, facility names, and addresses. A dispatcher should never assume the driver has reviewed these details. One missed appointment can result in a reschedule, a service failure, or even a canceled load. Notice that this shipment is listed as a live load and a live unload. That means the driver will be waiting while the freight is loaded and unloaded. This is important because waiting time directly affects productivity and could potentially qualify for a detention pay if delays occur. Next, review the commodity and weight information. In this example, the shipment weighs 42,800 pounds. That's a legal dry van load for many trucks, but it is still considered a heavy load. A professional dispatcher always verifies that the carrier is comfortable hauling that weight before accepting the shipment. Now let's discuss paperwork, because paperwork is where many carriers lose money. At pickup, the driver must obtain a signed bill of lading. Before leaving the shipper, the driver should verify that the paperwork matches the freight being transported. Any discrepancy should be addressed immediately. The driver should also record arrival and departure times. One of the most common mistakes made by dispatchers and drivers is failing to document in times and out times. If detention becomes necessary later, those timestamps often become the proof required to receive payment. At delivery, the driver must obtain a signed proof of delivery. The signature should be clear, and the paperwork should be reviewed before leaving the receiver. Missing signatures, incomplete paperwork, or lost documents can delay payment for weeks. Another section many dispatchers overlook is the special instructions. In this example, the requires the driver to arrive early, maintain seal integrity, and submit paperwork within a specific time frame. These instructions may seem small, but ignoring them can result in denied detention claims, delayed payments, or broker complaints. Finally, review the payment requirements. This rate confirmation specifically outlines what paperwork must be submitted and how quickly it must be submitted. Many carriers complete the load successfully, but still experience payment issues because the required document were not turned in on time. At Truck Driver Nation, we teach dispatchers that successful dispatching starts with attention to detail. A rate confirmation is not just a payment agreement, it is the roadmap for the entire load. The dispatchers who carefully review appointments, verify load details, communicate requirements to drivers, and ensure paperwork is completed correctly are the dispatchers who protect their carriers and build long-term success in this end. Remember, on a dry van load, your primary responsibility is making sure the load information, appointments, paperwork requirements, and payment terms are understood before the truck ever leaves the yard. The few minutes spent reviewing a rate confirmation can prevent hours of problems later. In this lesson, we're going to break down a reefer rate confirmation and discuss the additional responsibilities that come with temperature controlled freight. Many dispatchers believe that a reefer trailer is simply a dry van with a refrigeration unit attached. That assumption has cost carriers thousands of dollars in cargo claims over the years. When you're dispatching refrigerated freight, you're not just moving a load from point A to point B. You're responsible for helping protect products that can be damaged, rejected, or even destroyed if proper temperature procedures are not followed. As we review this rate confirmation, notice that the commodity being transported is frozen poultry products. Immediately, that should tell a dispatcher that temperature management is going to be one of the most important parts of this load. One of the first things you should review is the temperature requirement. In this example, the broker requires the trailer to be set at negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit and maintained throughout transit. This is not a suggestion. This is a cargo requirement. If the temperature is incorrect, the receiver may reject the entire load, and the financial consequences can be enormous. One of the most common mistakes new dispatchers make is failing to communicate temperature to the driver. Never assume the driver already knows. Every reefer load should include confirmation of the required temperature setting before pickup. Notice that the rate confirmation also requires the trailer to be pre-cooled before arrival. This is another area where dispatchers often make mistakes. If the trailer arrives warm and the shipper refuses to load it, the carrier may lose valuable time, miss the appointment, or risk having the load reassigned. Another critical detail is the equipment requirement. The broker specifically requires a 53-foot reefer trailer with a working refrigeration unit capable of continuous run operation. Dispatchers should always verify that the reefer unit is operating properly before the truck arrives at the shipper. A mechanical breakdown before loading is inconvenient. A mechanical breakdown after loading can become a cargo claim worth tens of thousands of dollars. Now let's talk about reefer fuel. Unlike a dry van trailer, a trailer has its own fuel tank that powers the refrigeration unit. One of the most expensive mistakes a carrier can make is allowing the reefer fuel level to get too low. If the reefer unit shuts down because it runs out of fuel, the temperature inside the trailer can quickly move outside acceptable ranges. That can result in spoiled cargo, rejected freight, insurance claims, and damaged business relationships. This rate confirmation specifically reminds the carrier to check reefer fuel levels before departure. Professional dispatchers should make this part of their standard operating procedure on every refrigerated load. Next, let's discuss the weight. This shipment weighs 44,500 pounds. That's approaching the upper end of what many reefer combinations can legally haul. Remember that refrigeration units add weight to the trailer, reducing payload capacity compared to many dry van operations. Always verify that the carrier is comfortable hauling the weight and ensure scaling requirements are followed before leaving the shipper. One item that makes reefer freight unique is temperature documentation. Notice that this broker requires a temperature download upon delivery. This means the receiver may want proof that the trailer maintained the required temperature throughout the entire trip. If temperature records are missing, incomplete, or unavailable, the carrier could face disputes even if the freight arrived in perfect condition. Another area dispatchers must watch closely is the special instructions section. In this example, late arrivals may result in chargebacks. Reefer downtime is prohibited except during emergencies, and temperature records must be provided upon delivery. These instructions are not optional. Failure to follow them can directly affect payment and carrier performance. When the driver arrives at pickup, make sure the bill of lading is signed and that the temperature requirements match the paperwork. If there are seal numbers provided by the shipper, those numbers should be documented and verified before departure. During transit, communication becomes extremely important. If the driver experiences a reefer alarm, temperature fluctuation, mechanical issue, traffic delay, or breakdown, the broker and dispatcher should be notified immediately. Small problems addressed quickly can often prevent major cargo claims later. At delivery, the driver should obtain a signed proof of delivery, verify any seal requirements, and provide any required temperature downloads or reefer records. Missing temperature documentation is one of the most common reasons reefer carriers encounter payment delays and cargo disputes. At Truck Driver Nation, we teach dispatchers that reefer freight requires a higher level of attention than standard dry van freight. Temperature settings, pre-cooling procedures, reefer fuel levels, equipment performance, and temperature records all become part of the dispatcher's responsibility. A dry van dispatcher focuses primarily on moving freight. A reefer dispatcher focuses on protecting freight. Understanding that difference is what separates average dispatchers from professionals in the refrigerated freight. As freight dispatchers, one of the biggest mistakes we can make is assuming that every load is simply freight that needs to be moved from one location to another. The reality is that different commodities create different risks, and some freight requires a completely different level of planning before a truck is ever dispatched. Now, we're looking at a flatbed rate confirmation involving steel coils, and this is the type of load that separates basic load bookers from transportation professionals. The first thing that should grab your attention is not the rate, it is not the mileage, it is not even the destination, it's the commodity. This load contains steel coils weighing 46,200 pounds. Many new dispatchers see a weight and stop there. Experienced dispatchers understand that weight alone doesn't tell the entire story. Steel coils are unique because of how the weight is concentrated. 46,000 pounds of steel coils behaves very differently than 46,000 pounds of packaged consumer goods. The weight is compact, dense, and concentrated into a much smaller area of the trailer. That concentration creates challenges with weight distribution, axle placement, trailer stress, and overall vehicle stability. This is why professional dispatchers don't simply ask whether a truck can hold the weight. They ask whether the equipment is properly configured for the commodity. As we continue reviewing the rate confirmation, notice the equipment requirements. The broker requires chains and binders. This immediately tells us that standard cargo securement methods are not sufficient for this load. Steel is one of the heaviest commodities moved on flatbed trailers, and securement becomes one of the most critical factors in the entire transportation process. When freight shifts inside a dry van, the trailer walls provide some protection. When freight shifts on a flatbed trailer, there is no protection. Everything depends on proper securement. This is why the broker specifically requires a minimum number of chains, proper binders, and compliance with DOT securement regulations. A professional dispatcher should immediately verify that the carrier has the required securement equipment available before accepting the load. One of the fastest ways to damage a relator is sending a truck to a steel facility that does not have the equipment necessary to secure the freight. Now let's talk about edge protectors. Many dispatchers see the requirement listed and don't understand why it matters. Edge protectors help prevent damage to both the cargo and the securement equipment. Without proper protection, chains, straps, and securement devices can experience excessive wear or improper pressure points during transit. Small details like this often determine whether a load arrives safely or becomes a costly claim. Another important detail on this rate confirmation is the tarp requirement. Many people assume steel is weatherproof because it's metal. That assumption can create expensive problems. Many steel products are sensitive to moisture, rust, contamination, and surface damage. Customers often require tarping to protect the product from weather conditions during transit. A dispatcher should never assume a steel load can move simply because the commodity is metal. Now, let's discuss why photographs are required before departure. The shipper specifically wants documentation showing that the freight has been properly secured before the truck leaves the facility. Those photographs create a record. If cargo damage occurs later, those images help establish how the freight was loaded and secured at origin. Experienced dispatchers understand that documentation protects everyone involved in the transaction. One of the most valuable lessons dispatchers can learn from flatbed freight is that not every carrier should haul every commodity. A carrier may own a flatbed trailer and still not be properly equipped for steel coils. Do they have enough chains? Do they have enough binders? Do they have steel tarps? Do they have experience hauling concentrated weight freight? Do they understand coil securement requirements? These questions are often more important than the rate itself. Flatbed dispatch is not simply about finding freight, it's about matching the right freight to the right equipment. The most successful dispatchers learn to evaluate commodities before they evaluate revenue. They understand how cargo behaves, they understand securement requirements, they understand equipment limitations, and most importantly, they understand risk. The lesson from this rate confirmation is simple. Steel coils are not just another load. They require specialized equipment, specialized securement, specialized knowledge, and careful planning before the truck ever leaves the shipper. When dispatchers learn to recognize those differences, they stop thinking like load bookers and start thinking like transportation professionals. And that's where real flatbed dispatching begins. Finally, we're going to look at a step deck rate confirmation and discuss why some freight cannot be hauled on a standard trailer, even when the weight is completely legal. One of the biggest misconceptions in freight dispatching is believing that weight is the only thing that matters. Many dispatchers spend their entire careers looking at load weight while ignoring dimensions. However, when you're working with step deck freight, dimensions often become more important than weight. As we review this rate confirmation, notice that the commodity is oversized machinery parts packaged inside a crate. The shipment weighs 48,500 pounds. At first glance, many dispatchers would immediately focus on that number, but experienced dispatchers know there is another number that matters just as much: the weight of the equipment itself. A typical 53-foot step deck trailer weighs approximately 11,000 to 15,000 pounds, depending on its configuration. When combined with a tractor weighing roughly 17,000 to 20,000 pounds, the empty truck and trailer combination can easily weigh between 28,000 and 35,000 pounds before any freight is loaded. This means most step deck operations have a practical payload capacity of approximately 45,000 to 48,000 pounds, depending on the truck, fuel level, and equipment configuration. Now, look back at this shipment. The load weighs 48,500 pounds. That should immediately tell a dispatcher that this freight is operating near the upper limits of what many step deck combinations can legally haul. This is one reason experienced dispatchers never assume a truck can haul a load, simply because the rate confirmation says so. Every truck is different. Every trailer is different. Every carrier has different equipment specifications. Now, let's discuss the reason a step deck trailer is being used in the first place. The dimensions listed on this rate confirmation show a crate that is 40 feet long, 11 feet high, and 8.5 feet wide. That 11-foot height is the key. A standard flatbed places freight higher off the ground. A step deck lowers the cargo position by dropping the trailer deck behind the front section. That lowers additional vertical clearance and allows taller freight to move legally in situations where a standard flatbed may not work. This is why step deck trailers are commonly used for machinery, generators, industrial equipment, agricultural equipment, manufacturing systems, and oversized freight. The trailer was designed specifically to solve height problems. One of the biggest mistakes new dispatchers make is focusing only on weight while completely ignoring dimensions. A load can be perfectly legal from a weight standpoint and still require special planning because of height, width, or length restrictions. An 11-foot tall shipment may travel through one route without any problems and encounter clearance issues on another route. This is why route planning becomes far more important when working with specialized equipment. Notice that the driver notes mention bridge law compliance and possible permit requirements. Many dispatchers misunderstand permits. They assume permits only apply to extremely large loads. That isn't always true. Permit requirements vary by state and can be triggered by weight, height, width, length, or routing conditions. Professional dispatchers verify permit requirements before the truck moves, not after the driver is already on the road. Another mistake many dispatchers make is failing to account for total operating height. They see the freight height listed on the rate confirmation and forget to calculate the height of the trailer deck itself. A load may appear legal on paper until the trailer height is added into the equation. This is one reason why understanding equipment specifications is so important. The trailer itself becomes part of the calculation. Now let's talk about one of the most overlooked dispatcher responsibilities when handling step deck freight. Knowing when to ask questions. If a load is approaching maximum weight limits, ask questions. If dimensions appear unusual, ask questions. If permits might be required, ask questions. If routing concerns exist, ask questions. Many expensive mistakes happen because dispatchers assume instead of verify. Professional dispatchers verify everything. Here's a valuable tip that applies to every trailer type you'll ever dispatch. Never book freight based solely on rate and miles. New dispatchers base the highest paying load on the load board. Experienced dispatchers evaluate the equipment requirements first. The best paying load in the world means nothing if the carrier cannot haul it legally, safely, or efficiently. Another valuable tip is understanding that every trailer solves a different transportation problem. Dry vans protect freight, reefers control temperature, flatbeds handle open deck cargo, step decks solve height restrictions. The more you understand why a trailer exists, the better decisions you'll make when matching freight to equipment. The biggest lesson from this rate confirmation is that step deck dispatching is really about understanding dimensions. Most dispatchers focus on pounds, specialized dispatchers focus on inches and feet. They understand how height, width, length, trailer configuration, bridge laws, routing restrictions, and permit requirements all work together. When you learn to think beyond the weight of the load and begin a value transportation picture, you stop thinking like a load booker and start thinking like a transportation professional. And that is where successful specialized freight dispatching begins.
Thank you for your time. Please like or subscribe our content. It takes a lot of effort for us to build these. If you want to be in the webinar, the phone number is listed below. Just send your email to it and we will put you on the roster for the next Wednesday's webinar. We appreciate it. Thank you guys so much.